Well, we often think of athletes as almost invincible when it comes to heart health, but undiagnosed cardiac problems is the leading cause of death among athletes and the number one cause of death among students on school campuses. I'm joined now by two people who've devoted much of their adult lives to fighting this potentially fatal condition. Shawn Sima is Impact Director for Who We Play For, a nonprofit that aims to eliminate preventable sudden cardiac death. It's work he began after his 16-year-old daughter suffered an attack, which she thankfully survived. Thanks for being here, Shawn.
Oh, thank you so much for having us.
And Bob Sefcick is Executive Director of the Jacksonville Sports Medicine Program. Welcome, Bob.
Welcome to you as well.
Thank you. And to our guests, if you've got a question about sudden cardiac arrest, or you've had experience with it, we want to hear from you. Give us a call at 549-2937 or send us an email to WJCT, First Coast Connect at WJCT.org. Shawn, I'd like to ask you a little bit about your daughter Lexi's story, but first, let's hear a little from an interview that she did about her experience.
So I grew up a healthy kid. I played every sport there was from the age I was 3. My parents threw me in everything. And when I was 16, I went to the gym and I was working out and I flew off the treadmill. And thankfully 3 people that did have their CPR and AED training, at that point recognized that I did have sudden cardiac arrest. So they started giving me CPR and a lady from the gym gave me an AED, and within the first shock I was alive again.
So that must have been a terrible day and a terrible realization for you as a father. How did that incident change you?
It changed everything about me. Retired Air Force guy, been a PA in the medical field now for 25 years. And that really took the rose-colored glasses off, so to speak, when, I'm a guy who's done thousands of physicals on kids to clear them to play sports. And I didn't really understand that I wasn't doing much to protect kids until my own kid, who was a healthy, lifelong athlete without one medical problem, basically dropped dead, running, 10 seconds on a treadmill. And so it definitely changed my life and put me on this mission to raise awareness and try to pay it forward.
And what is Who We Play For? What does that organization do?
Who We Play For, our main mission is doing EKGs, heart screens on children. The physical that I do, I've since learned, since my own daughter's story, misses most things that are going to kill our kids. The stethoscope is good at picking up irregular heartbeats, a fast heartbeat, a slow heartbeat, a murmur if you're lucky. But most things that kill our children are electrical problems, and you can't hear that on a stethoscope. And that's why, the electrocardiogram is so important to check these kids.
And Bob Sefcick, explain to us what is happening when these sudden cardiac arrest occurs.
Basically, you're going to recognize it with sudden collapse. So a normal activity is going to be interrupted with sudden collapse. It could involve seizure-like activity, but it's a very scary situation. And as we heard from that emotional testimony from Shawn's daughter, having people that are nearby that understand how to do CPR and understand what an AED, an automatic external defibrillator, is and where to go to get it and how to use it is very, very important.
And you've been doing free student-athlete testing, students and athletes testing for a number of years now.
Well, our program is a kids' sports safety program, and I'm just out there talking with Shawn. We're celebrating our 40-year anniversary here in Jacksonville. So it's a partnership with our Duval County Public Schools, Wolfson Children's Hospital, and other partners here throughout the city. And what our program does is it promotes advocacy, awareness for different types of sports injuries. So sudden cardiac arrest, as you mentioned, is the number one killer of young athletes, and that's something that we've been able to emphasize as we do our sports screenings annually with the help of Wolfson Children's Hospital and Nemours Children's Health.
And I want to get to the free testing that you are going to be offering next week, but this issue, many people will remember Damar Hamlin collapsing during an NFL game. Just a few weeks ago, the captain of Luton Town collapsed during an English Premier League match, soccer player, Bronny James. went into cardiac arrest last July. So there have been some very dramatic, terrifying, high-profile cases of people that suffered this on television during, a game that was being covered. All of them survived. Is the narrative changing around sudden cardiac arrest? Do you think that more people are aware of it because of these unfortunate incidents?
Yeah, I think definitely the awareness is there now. It's much better. I still think there's a lot of work to do. Most people, including me, never thought this was going to happen. And still people live that way, thinking, somewhat in denial. Most people don't know this is the leading cause of death in the United States. At least 1,000 people a day die suddenly from sudden cardiac arrest. And at bare minimum, and there's really nobody keeping good track of the numbers of young people, but it's something like 7,000 is reported by the American Heart Association. So that's like 20 kids a day at least. So the awareness is there. My daughter collapsed in 16. And to say now that there's so many more stories available on the internet and in the media is definitely the truth. And I think a lot of that in America is because of what happened with Damar Hamlin.
And I'd like to chime in there a little bit as well. I agree. The awareness is definitely increased. We are doing things in the state of Florida. For example, all coaches are required to have CPR education and certification. Our schools are required to have AEDs, but there's still so much more. Sometimes it gets skewed a little bit because of the big college programs, the pro programs. They have quite a few medical professionals that are on site every single day. So when you think about an average NFL game, there's about 30 medical professionals standing by, ready to respond to any emergency that happens on the field. If you look at a big-time college program, the same thing. If you look at a high school program, you're very, very fortunate if you have one single person there that has any medical expertise. So we do have a ways to go with that.
I want to take a call now from Evan Ernst. He is the co-founder of Who We Play For. Good morning, Evan, and tell us a little bit about your own personal story, why you came to found this organization.
Honored to do it. Thanks for having me. And good to hear Shawn and Bob on here. I grew up in a tiny town a little south of Jacksonville. Turns out all our friends ended up moving to Jacksonville after graduating college, including my little brother, and who knows, maybe me one day. But in our little tiny town, we grew up obsessed with soccer. We played the same group of kids since we were kindergarten. And those kids, all of us had the same dream, went to the same high school. We wanted nothing more than to remember the Titans finish to try and get a high school state championship. And then one day on our Disney movie journey in our heads, we watched our teammate collapse and die on a high school soccer field. His name was Rafe Macron. His number was 6. Rafe was the perfect picture of health. He passed every sports physical and annual wellness checkup. His pediatrician at the time was all our pediatrician. She was the president of the Florida Academy of Pediatrics at that time. When Rafe went down at Cocoa Beach High School, and suffered cardiac arrest. Like we said, with 80% of student athletes, it's their first symptom is sudden cardiac arrest. None of us knew what to do. Like Bob was saying, of course, there's no team physician at that time. At our high school, there was no athletic trainer. We had absolutely no clue. One of our teammates knew CPR. His name's Clinton Holmes. And he, after a few minutes, realized Rafe was in cardiac arrest and started CPR. And 2 of our other best buddies and co-founders of Who We Play For ran through the high school screaming, looking for an AED. The AED was locked behind a few doors. EMS got stuck in the mud, maybe a half mile or so away. And about 10 minutes or so, we think later, we got Rafe's first shock from the AED. And as Shawn will tell you, you really don't survive cardiac arrest unless you respond in the first 4 minutes. And if you do survive it after that, you're a miracle in general if you survive cardiac arrest, but you're definitely a miracle if there's not immediate response within 4 minutes and you survive. And for our teammate Rafe, his heart condition was HCM, hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, detectable around 95% of the time with an ECG. And HCM represents the leading cause of death for student athletes under 30 and in sudden cardiac arrest under 30. So it
Really,
was devastating for us to realize that for colleges, like great schools like JU and UNF and many more, the JAGs, it's standard of care to do ECG screenings. But for kids and student athletes, especially youth, it's the fine print.
oh, I'm so sorry, Evan, about that. It's a really terrible story. Let's talk, Shawn, about what's coming up next week that can help prevent that.
Yeah, so on Monday, January 8th, who we play for, Jacksonville Sports Medicine Program, News 25, First Coast News, City of Jacksonville, and several other partners, Care Source. We're going to be there all day from 8 to 7, and we're going to be doing electrocardiograms. ECG and EKG are basically the same thing, but they're 5-minute screens. Those tests will be all read by pediatric cardiologists. 1 in 300 kids have a deadly heart condition that they're not aware of that we miss on our physical exam. And we're going to spend a day out there saving as many lives as possible. It's all free thanks to, generous donations from so many of our partners.
And where can they get information?
Whoweplayfor.org.
Okay. Thank you so much, Bob Sefcick, for being here, Shawn Sima, Evan Ernst for calling in. We appreciate all that you're doing. Good luck.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure.